Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, Grandpa Frank here. We're in the Gospel of John doing commentary. That means that when I come to a little section, I'm going to stop and talk about it. We are up to chapter 19. Chapter 19. Then Pilate therefore took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe, and said, Hail, King of the Jews! And they smote him with their hands. Pilate therefore went forth again and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate saith unto them, Behold the man. When the chief priests therefore and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. The Jews answered him, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again into the judgment hall, and saith unto Jesus, Whence art thou? But Jesus gave no answer. Then Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and have power to release thee? Jesus answereth, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore he that delivered me unto thee hath a greater sin. And from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him. But the Jews cried out, saying, If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that are called the pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he saith unto the Jews, Behold your king. But they cried out, Away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered, We have no king but Caesar. So here's Pilate. He's trying to find a judgment on Jesus, but he finds nothing. He finds nothing, in the law, in the civil law against Jesus. And he realizes that the religious leaders are upset with Jesus for their religious law. Okay. And so they kind of go back and forth, and Pilate decides, well, to pacify them, to make them happy, he has Jesus scourged. It means he's been beaten. And the soldiers put a crown of thorns on his head, and they put a purple robe on him to mock him, for he's supposed to be royalty. And when Pilate brings them out, the religious leaders want him dead. They say, crucify him, crucify him. Well, why? Pilate finds no fault in this man. He, beat him just to pacify the religious leaders. And yet the religious leaders say because he made himself out to be the Son of God. And so that startles Pilate a little bit, and doesn't know what to do at first, but he just releases them. And the religious leaders say, We have no king but Caesar. Wow. Imagine that they're even denying their own God. That God is king, but yet they put Caesar in this place. Verse 16. Then delivered he him therefore unto them to be crucified. And they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went forth into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha. For they crucified him and 2 others with him, on either side one, and Jesus in the midst. And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. This title then read many of the Jews, for the place where Jesus was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Then said the chief priest of the Jews to Pilate, Not the King of the Jews, but that he said, I am King of the Jews. Pilate answered, What I have written, I have written. Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garment and made 4 parts to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat was without seam, woven from the top throughout. They said therefore among themselves, Let us not rend it, but cast lots for it, that it might be, that the scripture might be fulfilled, which saith, They parted my raiment among them, and for my vesture they did cast lots. These things therefore the soldiers did. Now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother, and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleophas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother, and the disciple by whom he loved, he saith unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then saith he to the disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour that disciple took her unto his own house. After this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, saith, I thirst. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar, and put it upon hyssop, and put it to his mouth. When Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, It is finished. He bowed his head and gave up the ghost. Now, here it's talking about Jesus on the cross. He's being crucified. Pilate writes a title to put over his head, the King of the Jews. And the Jewish leader said, No. Don't say he is King of the Jews. Say, he said he is King of the Jews. And Pilate, having enough of their riffraff, just said, What I have written, and let it be. So Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. He was crucified in the midst of 2 others, one on his right, one on his left. So 3 right there that were being crucified at the same time. And the soldiers right there taking his clothes and the coat now, which was of one solid piece, apparently, they passed lots for. And it turned out that that was in fulfillment of Scripture, whether they realized it or not. They probably didn't, of course, but it did. By his feet, by his side, had all these Marys. Um, the mother of Jesus, his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleophas, and Mary Magdalene. All these were right there gathered and witnessed of the cross. And then it says that to the disciple standing by, and the disciple standing by whom he loved, he said to his mother, Woman, behold thy son. So here it mentions the disciple whom he loveth. Now, many commentators, when they see this, they assume it's referring to John, because John, when it mentions, doesn't talk to himself, doesn't say it's me, he refers to himself in the third person. But yet back in the story, a couple chapters back, where we have Lazarus, we see that Lazarus is mentioned as the disciple whom Jesus loved. So is this referencing, just a thought, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it's not, but just a thought, is it referring to Lazarus as the disciple that Jesus loved, or is it referring to John, who wrote this gospel, as the disciple who Jesus loved? So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying one or the other. I'm just saying, interesting. Verse 31. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken, and that they might be taken away. Then came the soldiers and brake the legs of the first, and the other which was crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came out blood and water. And he that saw it bare record, and his record is true, and he knoweth that he said true, that ye might believe. For these things were done, that the scripture should be fulfilled. A bone of him shall not be broken. And again, another scripture saith, They shall look on him whom they pierced. Again, all these things are fulfilling scripture, and few people realize it at that time or at that moment. So again, the Jewish, and most people, most of us Gentiles, because it's talking about the Sabbath, which is Saturday, assume since it's the day before, so should it be Friday? Don't realize that in the Jewish calendar, there can be more than one Sabbath in a week. Here it's talking about a high day, a high Sabbath. Passover is a high Sabbath. So Sabbath, so that doesn't necessarily mean that Passover is on a Saturday. That's a whole other study for another time. But that would be interesting to go back into the book of Exodus, into the Old Testament, and find out what it says concerning those days, that those days are considered a high Sabbath. Okay, verse 38. And after this, Joseph of Arimathea, being a disciple of Jesus, but secretly for fear of the Jews, besought Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus, and Pilate gave him leave. He came therefore and took the body of Jesus. And there came also Nicodemus, which at the first came to Jesus by night, and brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds weight. Then took they the body of Jesus, and wound it in linen clothes, with the spices, as the manner of the Jews is to bury. Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre, wherein was never man yet laid. There laid they Jesus, therefore, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was nigh at hand. Okay, so the burial of Jesus. So you have um, Joseph of Arimathea, who comes and takes Jesus, and because it's interesting, all of this is right there. You have the place where he's crucified. They were crucified next to a garden, and in the garden was a tomb or a cave that was prepared for a tomb, and nobody had been in it yet, so it's a fresh cave. So that's where they took the body of Jesus, and because it was so close, they put him there and they prepared his body. Now, this might go all the way back to the time of Joseph. Remember, Joseph, when he went down into Egypt, he didn't. He was buried there in Egypt, and in the manner of the Egyptians, was entombed. Was wrapped, and so this is how. I guess they're saying this is how the Jews bury their people, that he was wrapped up in all this uh, ointment and so forth. A mixture, it says, a mixture of myrrh and aloes. Wow, where have we seen myrrh before? Think of the Magi when they came and the gifts that they brought. And then also of um, when Mary came and anointed Jesus' feet with all that perfume. I think all of those things are playing in here if you take a quick look at it. All right, so that's the end of that chapter, and we'll talk to you next time. Ciao.